You want it? We have it. The hottest mortgage and real estate strategy broadcast in the nation. A Smarter Way Home with your host, Danielle Boote and Victor Bals. 50 years combined experience, ranked in the top 1% in the nation for home loan originations 2020. Promise to expand your knowledge, utilizing creative mortgage financing and home buying strategies. Build a bridge for a better quality of life. Get your brain cells firing for a smarter way home. And welcome to another episode of A Smarter Way Home. I am your host, Victor Bals, loan officer, and we are looking for modern mortgage solutions and home buying processes here in this kind of crazy market. And today, my co-host, my hostess with the mostest, Mrs. Danielle Boote. How are we doing this morning?
I'm doing fabulous, Victor. How are you?
I am doing good. It is April 19th. In Detroit, and we got snow on the ground.
We do. That was a little bit of an unpleasant surprise yesterday.
Yeah, it's just depressing.
It is. And we had the windows washed at the office, which was fabulous, right? The inside, we're going to be all sparkly, and we're literally looking out at snow. So I don't know.
I cut the lawn on Sunday. You know, I got my yard. It's looking good. I got about 70% right now, all roughed in. The lawn's cut. I got my lines back in the lawn.
Oh, jeez.
So it looks pretty good, and then we have snow. So, and anyway, today is April 19th. So today is my 25th wedding anniversary. So I'm pretty proud of that there. So today
Congratulations to you and Maya. That's a great accomplishment.
And we are going to downtown Brighton today, and we are going a little bit of bar hopping. We call it bathroom hopping at our age. So we're going to go have a drink and go do some bathroom hopping, I guess. And then also, it is the anniversary of the Oklahoma bombing.
Oh, boy. That's okay.
Yep. And it is also Hitler's birthday.
Oh, that's a weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. April 19th.
Those are weird tidbits.
Yep. And I knew my wife about 3 total weeks before we got engaged, and we made it 25 years.
There you go. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, not too bad. And of course, she doesn't speak English. That's probably why we get along so well.
She's probably, she says things behind your back in Japanese that you don't understand.
Yeah, I just shake my head.
It's probably a good thing.
So anyway, hey, let's discuss this market here, man. And we've got indications out there, you know, from all the financial circles that we run in that there's a potential recession coming. We're seeing interest rates climbing. However, we have one of the best housing markets we've ever seen when it comes to a seller's market. We're seeing buyers getting kicked to the curb because of interest rates going up, and they just can't compete. What's your take on this market here right now?
Very, very interesting times we're in. So we have had unprecedented low rates for the last 2 years because of the COVID pandemic. And we're now returning to normal, kind of at a very painful pace. In January, our interest rates were in the low 3% range. We are now in the 5% range and climbing almost daily.
So we were pandemically spoiled with interest rates.
Yes.
You know, it's funny because Americans seem to have short-term memories, and
absolutely
everybody just remembers, rates were 3%, rates were 3%.
How about 2? They were we had 30-year fixed rates in the mid to high 2s for a really extended period of time. And nobody understands, you know, the average interest rate in the last 50 years, the average 30-year fixed rate is 8.5%.
8.5%. Well, we're not there yet.
No.
You know, but...
I mean, do you remember, I know we've talked about this personally, but what was your first interest rate? When did you buy your first house?
10.5%. And I thought, how in the hell am I going to be able to afford $343 house payment?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, ours was 10.5%.
I was making $9 an hour as a sweeper.
Yeah.
You know, and I bought a house.
Yeah.
10.5% FHA
So
mortgage.
It's kind of relative. I know when Jim and I bought our first house, we looked at it and said, well, he was paying rent and I was paying rent. And the cost to buy the house was less than what both of us were paying for rent. And we were somehow getting by, though I was always broke. I paid my bills, but I was going to college and living on my own and barely had enough money for food at the end of the month, but my bills were paid.
Yeah.
And we were just like, okay, this is crazy, but let's do this. So, I've had a lot of people say to me, well, how can these first-time home buyers afford homes? Well, most of the time, I am not going to say that there aren't going to be low-end first-time home buyers that aren't going to be squeezed out of this market. But most first-time home buyers right now are buying well under their means, meaning when we qualify someone for a mortgage, the rule of thumb is roughly 30% of their monthly income pre-tax can go towards their housing expense. I think most buyers are probably around 21 to 22%. So they're about 8 to 10% under what guidelines allow, which is still keeping them in a very affordable position. And the rental rates are going through the roof.
Yep.
So when you look at what that house payment is and the chance to build equity and to own your own home, if you're established and you plan on staying in the area for a while, buying is still a better deal. Even if interest rates hit 5.5%,
Yep.
that's still a great rate. And if you're young enough that you don't look back far enough to understand that the last 2 years was not normal, then you might be missing an opportunity. I did have clients tell me last year, I'm signing another lease. We can't handle the pressure in this market. We think it'll be better next year. And they're kicking themselves. And I do have a few buyers who have gotten a dose of reality. And not only are they paying more for their home, but obviously they're paying higher interest rates.
Yep. Yeah. I remember back in 1998, bought my home out here in Livingston County. My interest rate was 7.375, and I had bragging rights because I had a guy on the inside. I had to, had a little bit lower rate. And back then in 1998 in Livingston County, the median income was $56,000, and I bought it rural development, and zero down payment. And of course, my housing ratio was 29% of my income. It was actually about 24% of the median income at that point. And now when we look at today, I bought that house for $138,000. That home today is now $300,000. The median income now, just last week, I think is $91,000 in Livingston County. And now today, even at 5% or 5.5%, it's only about 26% of the median income in Livingston County. So it is still more affordable right now at 5.5% than it was 25 years ago.
Absolutely. And that's something that people don't really understand. Most U.S. workers have had pretty significant wage increases. I had a client recently, and this is an absolute true story. He literally I pre-qualified him for a mortgage. He starts looking and he calls me and goes, Danielle, I just got a $10 an hour raise.
Well,
because he's in a labor intense job, and his employer realized that, we better not lose this guy. We better give him a raise based on market conditions.
And that's $1,600 more a month.
Yeah, which is unheard of. That's absolutely unheard of. When have you ever heard of anybody getting that big of an increase? And then the unions are also paying something called prevailing wage. Have you run into that with your clients?
Is that like COLA?
Kind of. It is like a cost of living adjustment. Exactly. So the unions and union shops have to look at there's a base rate, and then there's something called prevailing wage, which then it gives these union workers right now a massive increase in pay. Now, it's not necessarily permanent, but they're going to make a lot more money this year than they have in years past, and there's such a labor shortage, they're all going to be busy for a while.
Oh. Yeah.
Which also, this is money in the market. And everybody goes, where is this money coming from? Well, yes, everybody got a few stimulus checks, and that's some of it. But if we're paying people more, the money is flowing into the market, and most our houses are worth more money. Our cars are worth more money.
Yeah.
I mean, when in your entire lifetime did you see that a lease vehicle 2 or 3 years old was worth what you paid for it, or is worth more than what your buy is on it. I mean, that's unheard of. We've always been underwater on cars, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
2-3 years in, boop, that car ain't worth nothing. The minute you pull it off the lot. Now you pull it off the lot and it's worth more.
Yeah, my nickname at the car dealership was Mr. Beating because I took a beating on every car.
Yeah.
I do. As soon as they get dirty, I want a new one.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just crazy times right now.
Well,
but how it impacts housing is the fact that people can't afford this. Now, if you're on a fixed income, I do feel bad for retirees or people on a fixed income because they're not going to keep up with
especially
the
with
inflation.
the inflation. Yeah, what is it, 8.5% now?
Correct. Yep.
That's the highest since 1981, I believe.
Yes.
Wow. So, as we talk about the market and we see interest rates going up, there was a stat yesterday in the news that says that sales are down. Home sales are down. Well, that's kind of fake news because there's just no inventory. We have many, many, many buyers out there.
Right. I think in Livingston County in February. I don't think we have March's numbers yet, or we just got them and I didn't read them. Mm-hmm. So I'm bad at that. In February, in Livingston County, homes sold for 104% of the asking price on average. And they're selling in days. Yes. So we have more buyers than there are houses available. So the market appearing to slow is fake news because it is a lack of inventory that is keeping the buyers out of the market, and the builders cannot build fast enough and they're not building spec homes like they did 15, 20 years ago. That still has not recovered. Yeah. But what we also have here is we almost have a slew of panic buyers that are trying to buy before these rates continue to go up, because they will continue to go up because that's the natural cure to fix inflation is raise interest rates. So we've got a number of buyers out there that are trying to buy before these rates go up. And we have a program, and I want you to explain what it is that we can actually help some of these buyers that are seriously out there looking, but afraid of further deterioration in the mortgage interest rates. What do we got, Danielle? We have a couple of different options to protect home buyers. One recent addition to our program offerings is something called Lock and Shop.
Lock and Shop. What is that, Danielle?
So Lock and Shop is a program that we can use for a motivated home buyer to actually lock their interest rate in for 50 days without an address.
Without an address. So a TBD address. Yep. And so how does one go about locking and shopping?
Well, they contact us. Standard pre-approval process applies. And if they're very motivated to buy and think that they can buy in a relatively short period of time, we can lock them in with no cost. And it does have the ability to do 2 30-day extensions. So potentially we can lock a rate in for 110 days, which will give them more than enough time, hopefully, to find a house, get in contract, and close quickly.
Okay. And let's say a client locks in today at, let's say, 5.6 or 5.7% there. And that goes for 50 days. What happens if rates drop, Danielle?
Well, corporate is telling us that we'll look at that on a case-by-case basis, and obviously
renegotiate. So
based on if we look at what's occurred since January, we have not really had any ebbing in interest rates. They keep going up and up and up. Now, one of the patterns that we watch in the market is what happens when the Fed raises the prime lending rate. The prime lending rate has nothing to do with mortgage interest rates directly. The mortgage rates come from the sale of mortgage-backed securities on the financial markets. Kind of a very simple explanation. But historically, what we see when the government raises the prime lending rate is that it settles down the bond market.
It settles down the bond market.
And
Explain
then,
a little deeper.
Well, when the prime rate gets raised, we typically see the bond market soften a little bit and lower the rates, just naturally. It has nothing, directly to do with the prime lending rate, because the prime lending rate is what banks lend on short-term money.
It's short-term money, meaning?
Car loans, home equity loans, credit cards, a variable rate, type loans.
Okay, so we're going to see a lot of people, a lot of consumers out there where their daily spending, when they use their credit cards or home equity line, they go buy a car, they're going to be paying higher
A little bit more.
interest rates.
Yeah, we're expecting a 0.5% hike at the May Federal Reserve meeting.
Yeah, and I hear there could be up to 11 of these hikes this year. Potentially. So that's going to raise credit card interest rates significantly, home equity lines and all that. And so what'll happen is the consumer will slow down their spending because of the higher interest rates, which helps us to curb inflation.
And here's the thing that's unprecedented right now in with dealing with inflation. Okay, this is the highest inflation since 1981. In 1981, interest rates were in the early 80s, between 12 and 18% on mortgages alone.
Yep.
But you would have earned 6 or 7% on a savings account at your bank.
I remember CDs was paying 16% for a 6-month CD for $10,000.
Yeah. So when you look at where inflation is, and again, inflation is the enemy of the bond market. It is never good for long-term interest rates because it erodes the value of what that long-term investment from a lender is. We're in unprecedented times, and the government, Janet Yellen herself said it's going to take skill to keep this inflation under control and luck. They really don't know. We've never quite seen this exact situation, I hate to say.
But it's completely opposite of 2009. Everybody says, oh my God, we're hitting the 2009 again. We're going to have a bubble. It's going to blow. Yeah. Remember, people, in 2009, that was all due to scrupulous lending. That was if you could fog a mirror and you cut grass and make $500,000 a year, here's $1 million, go knock yourself out. Yeah. And that type of lending drove us to the Great Recession, I guess, because these people couldn't afford homes. And that's when they lost their homes and we had way too much inventory out there, which drove home prices down, which in fact is completely opposite of now because we just don't have the inventory, the availability, and we can't build them. We got supply chain issues. So this is completely opposite of 2009.
Exactly. And you have a large percentage of homeowners out there that have very low interest rates.
Yep.
I'm not going to move anytime soon. My rates are under 3%.
Yeah.
Now, not that I plan on moving, right? We've only been in our house a few years, but why would I?
Yeah.
So you look at that and go, there are a lot of property owners out there that aren't going to move because if they don't need to, why would they give up that low rate? Yep. Consumers, U.S. homeowners right now have more equity in their real estate any time in the history of America. So even if the market did drop, we're not going to see a mass amount of casualties, meaning foreclosures or short sales, because there's too much equity in the property.
You brought up a good point here because with all this equity, with the feds raising the prime rate, interest rates on credit cards, home equity lines, automobiles going up, this could actually be the perfect storm for many consumers and people. There's rate conscious and there's objective conscious. And if you play, because this whole thing is a game, this whole market is a game. And if you have the proper coaches to teach you how to play the game, it could be a perfect opportunity for our consumers to say, you know what, I may want to hunker down. These rates are going to go up. And before they go up too much, I may want to consolidate debt and utilize my equity. Let's pull out $20, $30, $40, $50,000. Get rid of the car loans, some student loans, credit cards, the RV, the quad runners, the boats, and all that. Consolidate all that debt and free up monthly cash outflow. And yes, you may be at a higher interest rate, but we're looking at not rate conscious, but cash outflow conscious to save that cash outflow to prepare for the tight times that may be coming here with all the indications of the inflationary and all that stuff.
I mean, there are a handful of consumers that could not refinance in the last 2 years.
Right.
Whether they were self-employed, whether they took the forbearance and, needed to get their mortgage payments
or they didn't
restarted.
have enough equity at the time to be able to do a cash out refinance.
Right. I mean, if you've owned your home in the Detroit market, for instance, if you've owned your home for 3 or 4 years, you have gained significant equity. significant equity. And whether it is through a refinance or maybe a home equity line of credit, that can be even a great business tool to give you access to money at a lower interest rate. And ultimately, smart financial planning can grow your wealth. Now, we want to be very cautious when anybody takes equity out of their home. But for instance, we have taken people and saved them $1,000 a month. Do you realize, even if they could afford that payment, if they then paid that much extra on the mortgage, the new mortgage, they're going to be out of debt faster than they would be with the old strategy.
Absolutely. I often, when I meet with clients, I talk about the rate conscious versus objective conscious versus payment conscious, and I'll say, hey, how would you like 2% on the rate? And they said, yeah, sure, give it to me. That's the lowest rate on the block. And I said, oh, that's great, but that program is only amortized over 3 years. Your payment's $9,000 a month. And say, oh, hell no, I can't afford $9,000 a month. Oh. So you're payment conscious, not rate conscious. Well, I want them both. And I say, well, okay, well, how about this? How about I give you this program here? It's 10% interest rate. No, I don't want it. However, that program is amortized over, 80 years. And your payment's $500 a month, meaning you can own that home, never pay down the mortgage. You pay $500 a month, take advantage of all the appreciation over the next 30 years. And your payment's $500 a month. Would you take that? And they say, well, yeah, I would. Oh, so you're not rate conscious at 10%. You're payment conscious. Well, I guess so. So that's just, and of course we don't have those programs available.
Correct.
But it's just to get their mindset of, are you rate conscious or objective conscious?
Right. Well, I don't know about you, but with your clients, I am starting to see clients that are more willing to pay some kind of a discount point.
Oh, yes.
Now, I am not a big fan of discount points, but depending on the loan program, what their credit score is, and their down payment, even a partial point, I think we're going to see more of that in the next year, because consumers are going to go, well, can I save 0.3% or 0.5%, something of that nature, if they have the cash.
Right.
And we have buyers that are selling homes that have so much equity that they'll look at it and say, okay, yeah, I'll bring $2,000 or $3,000 more to closing if I can get a lower payment. The other thing that I'm telling everybody is, and I want you to think about your mortgage like this. If, for instance, if you put money in a 401k, would you expect to put the money in that 401k and never touch it for 30 or 40 years until you retire and have a good retirement? Probably not, right? I think even savvy or not so savvy investors, will manage their 401k. You will look at the funds that you put your money in. You will make sure that based on your personal risk tolerance, you're making good decisions. For instance, if you just put all your money in a bond market that makes 4% for 40 years, you probably are not going to be happy when you retire, right? You've got to take a little risk for the reward of saving enough to take care of yourself in your, retired years. You also should manage your mortgage. Your mortgage, even if it is a 30-year fixed rate loan, is not a set it and forget it situation.
It's a tool.
It is a tool, okay? It is a tool to invest in your future and to have a home. So we will help you manage your mortgage. So if you close this year and you're in the 4 or 5% range, you will be a prime target in the next 18 to 24 months for a possible and probable refinance when rates drop. As long as your income is good and your credit is good, and obviously the home equity maintains, you'll be in a good position. Now, I don't want anybody to go buy a house that they can't afford today. Buy the house you can afford today, manage the mortgage, and when the market shifts, jump on a lower rate, and it's a win-win-win situation.
Yep. Utilizing that mortgage. I think the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage is about 5.6 years old before it's refinanced or sold. So like you say, it's not a set it and forget it.
Right.
Taking the long-term conservative route on a 30-year fix, there's no wrong answer here. But what you want to do is wait and keep in touch with your loan officer through the years and take advantage of any downturn, or even if it's an upturn on interest rates. We always got to look at your financial well-being and what's the best tool with the equity position. What can we do to better your situation through the life? Again, utilizing that tool in any rate environment.
Now, if you are in a government mortgage any government loan is going to have some type of mortgage insurance attached to it because you did low down payment. That is a great opportunity in potentially 2 to 4 years to get out of the mortgage insurance.
Right.
If your home goes up in value, we refinance you to hopefully a conventional loan with little or no mortgage insurance in many, many cases.
Right.
That's a way to manage also the mortgage. So if you couple getting out of the mortgage insurance and lowering the rate, then it's a win-win situation. And then you really start thinking about a debt reduction strategy.
Right.
Because many borrowers that we refinanced in the last 2 years, if they said, hey, Danielle, I can afford my payment, but of course I want to take advantage of the lower rates, then we come up with a potential strategy to say, okay, do you want a 30-year mortgage? Do you want a 20-year mortgage? Do you want a 15-year mortgage? Or do you want to be conservative and stick with the 30, but pay your old payment and actually pay your debt off faster? We had a lot of clients. In fact, we had our client appreciation a couple of weeks ago. And I had a client come up to me that actually lives down on Southgate, I think. And so I've never met him. I've done 2 mortgages for him. I've done his mom's mortgage. And this was the first time that I actually met him in person. And he thanked me for profusely. He bought his house FHA, low down when he was moving his whole family back to Michigan. Mm-hmm. And then within a couple years, we refinanced him to a 20-year mortgage with no PMI.
Wow.
And he is on, he's got this great, and I saved him money. So he got a shorter term and a better rate, no PMI. He will have his house paid off faster because he manages it. Right. It's an asset. Your property is an asset.
That's right.
So you have to manage it in order to really be smart about it. And, and in fact, you know what he said to me? He goes, Danielle, we're going to buy a place up north for the family. His goal in the next year is to buy a recreation property for his family. And he said, I couldn't have even imagined this 3 or 4 years ago or 5 years ago, whenever he bought his house. I would have never imagined that I could afford to even think about buying a second home from his family.
Because his mortgage was managed correctly.
Yes.
With follow. And you got to think about managing a mortgage. It's almost like managing your lawn. You got to cut the lawn every week.
Yeah.
Else it's going to go to hell and it's going to start looking ugly.
Exactly.
You got to maintain it. Keep in touch.
And if you, here's the thing. I think most people get intimidated by money.
Uh-huh.
Right? But you have to then align yourself with the people that can give you honest guidance.
Absolutely.
Financial advisor, your loan officer, even your insurance agent is a big part of your financial success plan in life.
Well, it's like a doctor. You're not going to self-diagnose yourself. You're not a doctor. You're going to go get an opinion. We are doctors in our trade.
Right.
But
even if you go to a doctor, we all have a general practitioner, right? That's who you go to when you're sick, right? But if you have a bigger problem, if you have a heart problem, where are you going to go?
A heart specialist.
You're going to go to a heart specialist. If you have a lung problem, where are you going to go? Yeah. If you have a brain problem and you need a surgeon, well, you hope you're going to get the very best neurosurgeon in town. You need a specialist, whether it's medical, financial, even when it comes to real estate. Yeah. Let's talk about how important realtors are in this crazy market.
God. They got to earn it now, man.
They do. But, I see a success pattern with some of my clients that are working with the right real estate agent that understands the market. Here's one of the weird phenomenons, and I think that you're seeing this on a daily basis, but my clients will call and say, Danielle, we found this house. We want to write an offer. Okay, what are you going to write it for? Many of them are going over asking, and they're getting creative with the offer to say, okay, are you going to do an escalation clause? Are you going to do an appraisal guarantee?
Are you going to pay for the seller's cost?
Are you paying the seller's cost? Are you giving the seller free occupancy, right? If you're in a situation where there's multiple bids, you have to be creative. But one of the things we are seeing is the fact that some of these homes, a good majority of them, are being listed under market value, not dramatically, okay? You may see a house in a neighborhood where their houses are selling for $350, $360, maybe higher, and that house gets listed at $330 or $340.
Thus, trying to drive
the price up and getting a lot of attention
Yep.
very quickly, multiple bids. So the client will say to me, Danielle, I'm afraid, what's an appraisal guarantee and how do I make the decision on to write that into an offer? Well, that answer is very specific. Okay. We have to know how much of liquid cash the buyer has, what their comfort level is, where their pre-approval goes up to. But in most cases right now, we are seeing very few appraisal issues.
Right.
Even if the house is going over asking. First of all, houses are selling fast and furious. So we really almost need to look at what's pending in the market when it's likely to close. We're not pulling comps from 6 months ago. We're pulling comps in the last 90 to 120 days
Right.
for the most part in our market because there's that many sales. So when that happens, all it takes is one more house to sell at a higher price than what sold 6 months ago, and we keep raising that threshold of what those homes are worth. So in most cases, the buyer is not tremendously at risk. Now, the buyer needs to understand how it all works. The buyers that have more ability to put money down are going to have more flexibility when it comes to negotiating an offer that way.
So, you just mentioned a whole slew of strategy in there as these home buyers want to compete in the market there. So you brought up a couple points of saying, escalation clauses on appraisal, paying buyer or seller cost. So a smart consumer who utilizes potentially the lock and shop comes to us and does the lock and shop. There's some more homework that needs to be done, and that is one, checking your 401k. Is there potential for you to take a loan and or a withdraw? Do you have any stocks that you could cash in? Could you get gift funds from family members? These are the type of questions that for being prepared to compete
Right.
if we come across that escalation clause, paying the buyer costs, because generally, people, you're going to come to closing with your down payment, 1 year of taxes, 1 year of insurance, and let's say about $4,000 in costs. That's your general funds to close. But we need to go above and beyond that if you're going to compete in this market. Is that a fair statement?
I believe that is a very fair statement.
What other advice can we have? What other cookie jars could potential buyers, where should they be checking for funds? Equity lines, if they have an equity line on their current home.
A lot of people are trying to buy without selling their current home. So there are several strategies. You can pull equity out of your house potentially before you're ready to buy. That's an angle. And it really is understanding the numbers. I've had a few. I try to give my clients a range, and I will tell them, look, this is where, if the client says to me, well, Danielle, I don't want to spend more than $250. Well, I'm going to tell them right up front that you need to talk to your realtor. We need to focus on your payment. We need to focus on what you can afford to bring to closing to find you the right house. And if you have to be a little bit flexible on that purchase range, you're going to be more successful if we have a range to work with than if you just have a hard and fast number.
Right.
And buyers need to kind of get out of their own way.
In our conventional buyers, a lot of the conventional buyers are coming in with 20% down. And let's just suppose it was a $300,000 purchase, and 20% is, of course, $60,000. However, if there is an appraisal guarantee, an appraisal gap, paying the seller's commissions, title insurance, transfer taxes, consumers, you can actually switch that loan from 20% down to 5% down and free up $45,000 to allow you to compete and have the money for those appraisal gaps, the transfer taxes, or any of those other fees. And of course, you may end up in PMI insurance, but did you know you can actually buy out of that PMI insurance up front at closing for about a 40% discount? And that's something that we could definitely guide you on as well. But for any of the buyers putting 20% down, that is not the end all. That really gives you a lot of options to compete out there.
And I know that nobody wants to pay PMI, okay? But on a conventional loan, the PMI will drop off when you have 20% equity.
Yep.
The other thing with PMI is if you have good credit scores, it's really not expensive these days. Well, the rates have come down dramatically. So if you use it as a leverage tool, And most of our buyers, if you really have 20% down, most people don't need to flex all the way to 5% down.
Right.
But sometimes they do. I mean, I've had a couple of buyers go, Danielle, the house that we're buying, we know we're going to need to do a few things to it. Let's not do 20% down so that we can A, get the house, and B, have cash to fix it up.
Yeah, again, Danielle,
which then infuses money into the markets.
Like you stated, PMI is not the devil. It is
No,
another
it is a
tool.
tool. Mm-hmm.
We need to teach our consumers how to become craftsmen.
Yes, and
journeymen.
Absolutely.
On how to utilize that right tool for that right job. It's just like a grandpa in the garage. Remember, he had that thingamajigger in his toolbox and you never knew what the hell it was for. But when they use it for that one job, you understood. Go, man, I couldn't have done it without that one tool. Yeah. That's what PMI can be used as well.
And I'm telling everybody right now, I said, look, you're going to be happier in 6 months if you buy now than you will be waiting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the kind of the only thing that we can guarantee is that we expect these rates to go up. They have gone up a lot faster than anyone would have predicted this year. I'm hoping that it ebbs a little bit and levels, but get the house. Again, we have 45 million millennials out there in the world. They
competing with you.
Competing with you. They are a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
And 40% of all home buyers are first-time home buyers.
Well, you know what we got here is also the ego gets in the way of our home buyers too, because I must have gotten 3 calls this week and saying, they lost out on another one over the weekend. And man, I should have bit back in October when I drew the line in the sand and I'm not paying $5,000 over asking price and I'm not doing appraisal guarantee.
Right.
Now interest rates are 2% higher. That payment's going to cost them $500 more a month. And now that house is $25,000 higher.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're just kicking themselves.
They are. So again, come up with a strategy and execute. I had several clients in the last week that I pre-approved a long time ago that are refreshing pre-approvals. They're still out there, still looking. And some of them, I actually feel bad for that retired population on a fixed income. Yeah. They might have sold. I have one client, she sold her house about a year ago. So she's got the money in the bank to buy. And, she is now still trying to buy a house. And I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. Yep. They're getting a smaller and smaller house.
Yeah.
Everybody's weighting themselves into the poorhouse.
Yeah. And you look at that and go, okay, and we've talked about this before, that we're in the middle of a 9-year cycle with these millennials. Every year we have more millennials hitting that milestone of about 30. And that will continue for about 4 to 5 more years, where there will be more and more millennials coming of age. They're established, they're working, they've got families, they've got dogs, they want yards, they want condos.
And that's your competition, people.
Yes, yeah. So you look at it and go, we just didn't build houses really since 2008. Right. The country has not recovered, the home builders have not recovered, and now with the shortage of labor and the shortage of supply of materials, they can't build houses fast enough.
Not only build houses, build affordable housing.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah, there are communities. There was a community in Florida, in fact, Cape Coral, Florida, near and dear to my heart, actually shut down all building permits for a week. They are so backlogged. And they rolled out a new computer system, which I think is part of the challenge. Last week, they literally said, sorry, we are not accepting any permit applications for anything. They've brought additional staff in to try to get the backlog of building permits out. And in Florida, it'll be 4 to 6 months just to get building permits. Now, it certainly is not that slow in our market, thank goodness. But that is you look nationwide, and we had the president of the Home Builders Association of Michigan on a couple months ago, and he talked about the fact that the government systems and regulations are only causing it to be more expensive to build houses, and it takes a lot longer.
What about 30% of the cost? It goes into government type permitting and
taxes, zoning. Yeah.
It was incredible.
So it is. So you look at that and go, okay, we're not building houses fast enough for the amount of buyers that are coming into the market.
Okay, so we don't see this changing anytime soon.
No, we don't.
Because most home buyers are in it right now. They figure, okay, I'm going into the home buying market. I'm going to be in and out in 6 months. I'm going to get me a home.
Right.
That's taking longer now.
Absolutely. And if you think, people are going, well, where's the foreclosures? Well, there aren't any. The forbearance market, and I haven't seen this month's numbers on the forbearances. The forbearances have wrapped up. People are paying their mortgages on time. People are getting caught up that we're behind. The mortgage companies are renegotiating with homeowners that are able and willing to pay to give them a path to maintain home ownership. If you see foreclosures, they're going to be unique situations, that a house that pretty much was not able to be sold by a seller. Maybe somebody passed away and didn't have a family to deal with it, or maybe the house is just in such awful condition that it wasn't worth selling. And in that case, it's not going to be a house that a typical buyer is going to be able to afford, because nobody wants to deal with the renovations. I mean, we do have renovation loans out there, but I will tell you right now, to try to get a contractor and to do something in 6 months is almost impossible.
Absolutely.
And the buyer's realizing that, well, I'm just better off spending more money to get the house that they need that is closer to being move-in ready. Buyers are not afraid of paint, carpet, flooring. Okay. Right. They don't necessarily want to put roofs, windows, and kitchens in. So as a seller, you want to maximize your return. Look at what needs to be updated in your house and go, okay, if a seller puts a roof on, that's going to be big attention, right, to a buyer to go, oh my gosh, this house has a brand new roof.
That saves me $25,000.
That saves you $25,000. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, I guess it's an analogy here that we want to look at, because you talked about, real estate is an asset. It's an investment. It's like a 401k. And until you make that decision that I'm going to get a 401k and I'm going to start investing for my future, if you make that same type of mental thought saying, I'm going to enter the home buying market, I'm getting me an additional 401k in a retirement vehicle, and you just dive in and do it,
right?
Regardless if it's exactly what you want and it's got everything you need and it checks off all the boxes, either you're in or you're out.
Right. And you remember when you started a 401k years ago? Remember how painful it was? The whole thought, I can't save $50 a paycheck. Yeah. I don't have an extra $50 a paycheck. Yep. But once you start putting that money aside,
you don't see it.
You don't see it, and you don't feel it.
You pay yourself first.
Yes. Yeah.
Auto deduction. And if you buy a house, you are paying yourself first.
So what is the interest rate on rent?
What do you mean? The interest rate on rent?
Yeah.
Oh, I never ran those numbers.
It's 100%.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're getting nothing out of it.
Nothing. So if you're paying rent, and right now we are hearing rents an escalation of $1,500 to $2,000 a month. So what is it? $1,500 a month times 12, 30,000?
Something. Yeah.
Okay. So if you rented for 2 years, you just gave away $60,000 to someone to pay somebody else's mortgage down.
Right. Now let's just take that $300,000 home. Let's say it costs you $2,000 a month for a $300,000 home at a 6% conservative. 6% appreciation is going to go up $36,000 in 2 years. Mm-hmm. Right? That's $1,500 a month. It's going up, meaning you would have to make about $2,000 a month. Then after taxes, you'd have to put $1,500 away a month,
right?
Just to keep up with appreciation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, did I tell you? Allison and Trevor bought a second home a couple months ago. Thank God they did. They closed in January, right before the rates went up. They made over $100,000 in 3 years on their house.
Wow!
And I told Allison, I said, I want you to know that your father and I have never ever made that much money on a house. And you go, these are kids in their 20s, both working very, very hard. They put so much sweat equity into their first house, fixing it up. But you go, that's insane. For them, how could they have saved that much money in 3 years? They couldn't have. But it allowed them to buy a beautiful home for their family.
Looking at that $300,000 home, right, that we're thinking about. Mm-hmm. At a 6%, and if you put 20% down, that's a $60,000 investment, okay? At a 6% appreciation in 3 years, you would make $57,000 in appreciation. That's 100% on your money, on your investment.
Yeah. And
in 3 years.
My kid's first house was RD. They did zero down.
So what's the rate of return on a zero down?
I mean, they did put a lot into it, paint, flooring, all that kind of stuff. Tons of sweat equity. Yeah. You know, my son-in-law still shudders at the sight of those luxury laminate floors. He laid about 1,200 square feet of flooring. He's like, I'm not doing that again. You know, but you go, when would you have heard of that ever? So when people ask, well, how can they afford this? That's why. These young adults that bought houses in the last 3 to 10 years have more equity that they've pulled out than any of us old people could ever imagine.
Wow.
You know, so you look at that and go, that's where the money is coming from. It's not just stimulus checks. Yes, it's an increase in wages, but it's also the really smart young adults that have bought properties and invested in themselves and are able to parlay that, sell it, move on to the next opportunity.
Wow.
You know,
hey, I just running the numbers on that $2,000 rent, right? I just ran that number. If you have a $2,000 a month that you have to pay for rent, at even 5.5% interest, equates to a $352,000 mortgage that you could have, plus gain a tax deduction, plus gain appreciation, and that's a $350,000 mortgage. My God, you know, we could get you in that house for $25,000.
Yep. And if you looked at, let's say, $2,000 a month rent.
Yeah.
If you rented for 5 years, that's $120,000.
Oh my God.
That you have spent
on
nothing, paying off somebody else's mortgage.
And you can't even paint the walls of the color you want.
No. And the other thing too to keep in mind with your house payment is part of it's taxes and insurance.
Yeah.
You know, some of that's tax deductible depending on how you file your federal return. But yeah, you got to really look at the big picture.
So even at these rates, you know, and you got to think of people. You know, with inflation, we got wages going up. Remember that principal and interest payment never changes for 30 years, and your wages go up.
It's called inflation protection.
Yeah,
I think
you want when you buy a home, you want inflation because you're going to make more money, and your house payment stays the same.
Right.
You don't want inflation when you're home buying. No. You want it once you closed.
Correct. So it will continue. So there's just a lot of options. There's a lot of things to consider. There is not a one size fits all approach. And again, we'll talk about the FBI, right?
Yeah.
Be very careful listening to fathers, brothers, and in-laws, because if someone has not bought a house in the last couple of years, they're not going to give you really good advice, and you may lose out.
That's our buddy, Barstool Billy.
Yeah.
My God, he hasn't been on in a couple shows.
I know, but he's out there. He's out there.
Yeah, he's going to need a bigger bar stool.
Yeah, I love when people say, well, my friend said this.
Yeah.
You know, well,
My friend said the market's going to crash.
Yeah, well.
My dad said. Mm-hmm. Wow. You know, and that's the thing, that everybody's situation is absolutely unique, you know, and you need to dive in and talk to a doctor of mortgages, because we got to dig in and sometimes do brain surgery or quadruple bypass in a sense, because there's a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah.
But let's get back to lock and shop. So we talked about locking and shop. So I'm a customer. I go to you, Danielle, and say, look, I'm very interested. I'm out there every day, beating the streets, looking to put in offers. I can go in and lock with you, and on a 50 days. Now, and I've been doing some research, and what happens if today's market rate, let's say, was 5.5%, when we do that 50-day lock, it's generally a little bit higher. It's like 5.6 or 5.7. It's about an eighth, possibly a 0.25% higher, but that gives the protection. And that first 50 days is free.
Correct.
No charge.
No deposit.
And then what we can do is we can do a 130-day extension, and that costs the customer at closing a 0.5 point. And let's explain what a 0.5 point is. A 0.5 point is 0.5% of the loan amount. So if this was a $100,000 loan, it would cost you an additional $500 to extend that for 30 days, the first 30 days. And then if we extended the second 30 days, it would cost you an additional half a point or $500 on that $100,000 loan. But what I've seen here in the last couple months is these rates just keep going up, and these people wished they would have locked and shopped.
Right. Right.
And again, and if rates fall, we have the ability to go back and for a renegotiation.
Absolutely. So there's really no
risk.
There's no risk. And you just have to be a motivated buyer. You know, in fact, I talked to a past client over the weekend who's been shopping for a while, over a year, and she was in Vegas at the time. So I told her about lock and shop, but I'm not going to lock her until she's really shopping.
Yeah.
Being in Vegas is not shopping.
Yeah.
You know, I said, when you come home and you connect with your realtor and let's strategize what needs to happen here for you to get a home, then I'll consider doing the lock and shop.
So if one was to say, okay, I'm going to get with my realtor, I'm going to get serious, I'm getting with my father's brother's in-laws, seeing what money pools I have get together, how much is in my checking and savings, do I have access to a home equity line of credit, can I pull from a 401k on a loan or a withdraw, meet with your loan officer, get a good solid plan, know your limits, know how much cash we have to compete with these appraisal guarantees, escalation clauses, seller paid cost, title insurance cost, transfer taxes potentially paying. Get our plan. Now it's time to lock and shop and get out there and get serious.
Correct. So here's an example. I had a client that I locked last week. They were very concerned about rates going up because they're moving back to the Livingston County area because of a job transfer. So they have a house to sell. They were on the verge of listing it. So we know that they're committed, right? They're going to get this house sold. They've got to move, and they're working with a great realtor that I trust immensely is going to get them into a house very quickly and give them the advice that they need. So sure enough, they called me yesterday. They were already writing an offer. I locked them in a week ago. Okay. So they know that they have a winning strategy. They're now not stressed about interest rates, regardless of what happens between now and getting the offer accepted.
They've got protection.
I've got all of their financials, and I could close them in 2 weeks if I had to. So we've got a plan. That's the right buyer for the lock and shop. Now let's also mention a new construction extended lock option.
Yes.
Okay. There are buyers that are getting tired of shopping and are saying, you know what, we found a neighborhood we like. There's a builder. He's got some land. He's building some houses. Let's look at new construction. We do offer extended rate locks for new construction properties only up to 1 year.
Yep, and actually the minimum time is 120 days, then 180 days, 270 days, or a 12-month extended lock. And we've seen these builders, I've worked with a lot of builders, and they used to build these custom homes in 6-8 months. Now they're taking, 8 to 10 to 11 to 12 months because of the supply chain issues.
Right. So for my clients, typically what I advise is get in contract to build. Let's look at rates. Let's look at the builder's time frames, and we're going to pad them. The builder says 9 months. I'm going to lock you for 12.
Right.
Okay. We're not going to shortcut that lock. That particular situation does require a 1% deposit, but it is not a fee. So the deposit, for instance, $300,000 mortgage, 1% is $3,000. We request that deposit amount, and it is completely credited back to you at closing. It is not a fee. It is just like the deposit that you're going to give the builder, okay? Builder's deposit, credited back at closing. Lock deposit, credited back at closing. And we will give you a float down option between 45 and 60 days of closing. So let's say we locked you at 5.5, and by the grace of God, rates are at 4.5 before you close. Fantastic. We're dropping your rate. We're going to give you the best of both worlds to protect you from rates going up. Now, I have had some builders actually are starting to request this because they are worried about rates going up and what's going to happen if the buyer doesn't qualify.
Right.
So we're in a very, this is an interesting time for us as loan officers because we cannot force a buyer to lock their rate in. We have to give them the facts and help them make the decision. But this, I think, is a highly desirable option right now if you're considering building.
And let's talk about those long-term construction-only locks now. And I'm going to talk about the 6-month lock. So the 6-month lock works like this. Let's say today's rate was 5.5%. We're going to take that 5.5%. We're going to add 0.5%. So the worst your rate could get would be 6%. And it's actually 30 days prior to closing, you have a float down option. So if rates fall down to 3.5%, 4%, you get that lower rate, that market rate. And again, that requires a 1% deposit that is credited back to you at closing, or it's refunded if you are denied for some reason. Right. You lost your job or something like that. Yep. That money is refunded. If you go for anything over the 6-month lock, we actually take, let's say today's rate was 5.5%. We actually add 1% to your interest rate. So the worst your rate would be 6.5%. And of course, it still has the same float down option. 30 days prior to closing, you have an option for a one-time float down. So if rates are 4.5 or 5, you'll just float down the market. So it's a great insurance policy to protect you from further deterioration. And what they want, and you're putting that deposit, that's just you putting skin in the game to show that you are committed and you are serious about getting that job done. It's a great program. I have several on the extended lock right now.
Yes, definitely a good option.
And that 4-month one, that 120-day lock is if you're within like the drywall stage of a home, you're generally within about 4 months of closing. We also have the 120-day extended lock where we only add 3/8 to the rate, okay, and then of course it's only a 0.5% deposit,
right?
So
lots of options to consider, and to not scare you away from the market. To go, we have ways to protect the buyers right now. Lots of different options, which is exciting. Yeah. So I guess we could wrap up the show with the lock and shop. We highly urge you give us a call and look into that, see what your options are. We highly urge you to pool all your money from all your resources, get with your real estate agent, get with the lender, and have a powwow to determine maximum parameters, what you're willing to give, and get out there, get serious, lock and shop, and wipe out your competition, I guess is a way. Any closing words, Danielle? Keep in mind, if you are thinking about buying, that when you get a pre-approval, unless you do a lock and shop, the interest rates are subject to change and subject to change daily. So whether you're shopping
couple times a day.
So if you call a lender in the morning and get a rate and call them in the afternoon, it might be a different rate. And that is going to be the same for any lender out there. So, be wary. I mean, we're going to see situations where if it seems too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true.
One word of wisdom: if you're shopping around to different lenders for rates, be fair to the lender. Check with each lender within about 10 minutes of each other.
Honestly,
because the market changes that dramatically.
And you have to look at fees too, because there's a lot of lenders right now that are quoting
2 points, 2.5 points. Yeah.
And you know what? I saw an ad on social media today from bankrate.com. And they actually were advertising a 15-year fixed rate at like 4.09%. So I read the fine print, and it actually said that they were quoting an interest rate from April 1st. They didn't disclose any fees and just said, this interest rate might not be available when you look at it.
Wow.
And I went, wow, 19 days later, and they haven't updated the social media ad. I don't think it's legal, but Bankrate's not lending money. They're not a bank.
Yeah, they're just an advertiser for other banks.
Correct. And it said something about this was the lowest rate offering on this day.
Well, why can't we put an ad out there that we got 2.625% on a 30-year fixed, and this was as of July
with 12
of
points.
July of 2019.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Let's advertise those rates. The phones will ring really fast. You want to talk about getting the phones to ring.
Yeah. So, we would love the phones to ring.
Yeah.
So give us a call because we're really here to help you, the consumer, and you, the real estate agent.
There's options. Don't be afraid.
Yeah. You know, call the brain surgeons, man. You know, that's what we've been doing for years.
Yes.
My God. So anyway,
so many years.
I think we're going to sign off. That was Mrs. Danielle Boote, loan officer extraordinaire. My name is Victor Bals, and we'll see you next time here on A Smarter Way Home.